two, and one. So like no one thinks that capitalism is the pathway to equality and acceptance and all that, right? Maybe it is the pathway to enfranchisement, to power, to influence if you are the right type of person, the right place, with the right type of ideas. Even Vice Ganda herself has to market herself as the right type of LGBT while serving a random suit in the background that's making a profit of her personality. The LGBTQ community frankly deserves more than this forced state of indoctrination, and I think Op's way of trying to feed this upon the community is just unsuccessful. A lot of responses towards opposition bench. One, LO's main frame is in saying that capitalism is unbiased regardless of your race, gender, or ethnic background. But like, if you just gut check this, it's just not true, right? Like statistically, trans people have significantly harder time finding jobs or finding good jobs or finding safe jobs. B, like statistically, gay people have the highest amount of suicide rates. They are predominantly a lot more likely to be depressed and all of the bad stuff associated with being not from the norm, not from the majority. So maybe the principle of capitalism in Adam Smith's work is unbiased, but the reality is, and how it works in the real world, is that it's a lot more exclusionary because of the fact that it needs to cater to the majority view. E.g., what Kuya Seth said in the beginning of his speech wasn't really taken into account. Two, Eno explains that economic enfranchisements are good for these people, right? Firstly, this is already not true because of the exact same frame that my partner set up. E.g., Joseph explains how often all of these things and all of these stories are indeed tokenistic, and how all of these sorts of enfranchisement and where the money comes from is inherently something that's kind of like against the justice that the LGBTQ community needs. Let's take, for example, all of the examples that LO gave, right? All of these stories that promote a gay dude or promote Baiskanda or promote any of those people. Like all of these stories and all of these particular forms of enfranchisement do two things. Either A, you get a sanitized version of the struggles that these people face because market demand suggests that you can't be too explicit, else you're going to be too controversial, and I don't think that's going to make much of a profit. But B, if it does work and if it does exist, and I'm taking up at their best, right? You make this community even more depressed because now there's a set standard for how you have to act as a gay dude or as a lesbian girl or as a non-binary individual. Point is, as a consequence of this hyper-capitalistic world that opposition wants to set up in, you literally make people sadder at the point in which the success becomes something that you can never achieve, and all of the failures make it even more apparent that you are not someone that the majority likes. Extension. On the counterfactual, why the LGBTQ community is probably going to be a lot more compatible with more equitable and fair ideologies, chief of which is socialism or any other sub branch of the isms that you'd like, and why you literally cannot have that under capitalism. Why is this true? The first reason this is true is just because, in comparison to capitalism, which values the rule of the majority, socialism or all of those isms inherently are a lot more collective based. That is to say, in capitalism, all major decisions inherently are tied based on what the market demands and what the market expects. But as to the frame that Joseph points out in his speech, which I don't necessarily think that opposition has responded to yet, it is clearly evident that this market falls under the broad category of the majority, which the fact that the people who currently encompass a majority of these roles are fundamentally opposed to the ideas of the LGBTQ movement, e.g. the most developed and most capitalistic countries, like those in South Korea, like those in Japan, even those in the US, are still systematically against non-binary people or still stick to this inherent form of conservatism as to the same exact thing that Joseph said in his speech. Why is this then comparatively better under other systems and other ideologies? At the very least, more socialist leanings or more socialist forms of government are far more equitable in theory and in practice. They are incentivized to do it because that is literally what they believe in. It is a fact that Mao Zedong's China has had major development for women's liberation when it was his direct policy to include that women also hold up half the sky. But even without any of those weird examples, right, what socialism is best at is in equalizing the playing field in such a way that all demographics are more able to represent themselves. Impact and weighing. Capitalism is unable to meet the demands of the justice of the movement because the people it does listen to is in the people that it does listen to is in the majority, the LGBT is in the minority, and they really don't have any incentive for that to particularly change. The second reason is all of ops benefits at the end of the day still kind of contribute to the ruling and oppressive elite that currently exists in status quo, right? E.g., any attempts at rainbow capitalism or operating under the capitalist system to promote LGBTQ doesn't just promote tokenism, it literally goes against active change.
POI.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to flip LO's case, but before that, sure, I'll take the POI.
So in this socialistic, I don't know, paradigm, what is the incentive of the people to collectively help a marginalized or particularly disenfranchised group?
I mean, that's literally in what the fundamental principle that like all of these isms like believe in, right? That is to say, that's not really the focus of it. I'm just making the comparison as to why this is better and my capitalism inherently isn't. Back to the point, right? All of LO's point. I think that all of the companies that want to express themselves as progressive continue to provide funds and collude with the most staunchest of anti-LGBTQ politicians. They express how queer they are when they are often discriminatory to the same people that they want to prop up and support. They don't even support any form of union busting. Note that this is something that operates purely on the pragmatic basis that opposition wants to talk about. A lot of the current actions done in order for the LGBTQ to demand some form of justice and recompense, like having unions, like having collective actions, which already happen under status quo, are currently busted and shut down by the capitalist structures that they try to appease to. Impact and weighing. Just on pragmatic outcome for the LGBTQ movement on either side of the house or on either side, a lot of the more socially democratic countries like the Nordic countries who have a particular lean towards less capitalist incentive structures are just a lot more fair and are just a lot more able to support all of these particular groups of people, right? So all of these things are good when it's probably not going to have a skew towards capitalism. E.g., all of the stuff that Joseph said that wasn't really responded to. All those reasons, oppose.